and welcome to another episode of the Market Pulse presented by Smart Touch. I have a wonderful episode with you today. Today, my special guest is Paolo Neto from NEO. Paolo, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Boa tarde.
Boa tarde.
So before Paolo and Ray, as we just hopped on, I was talking about how your background is extremely fascinating, especially when it comes to the international market and your just background expertise and what you bring to the NEO team. And for those, that are listening for about NEO, the New Estate Only, it is a premier global real estate platform focused exclusively on our industry's new developments and new home builders, connecting international buyers, developers, realtors, investors across a seamless one platform. And I know we're going to talk more about it because it's almost the best way I can describe it when I'm talking to people is it's like MLS on steroids for the world. So it just takes it from next level to the next level to the next level. And we're going to, and it's really fascinating.
It's a great starting point. Yes.
Yeah. Well, just to get the people and for a starting point for you, Paolo, just to give a little background, you are the president and chief growth officer of NEO. You bring a unique background spanning from real estate, global commerce, even creative leadership. You were the VP of international operations for the second largest home builder here in the U.S., facilitating 11,000 international real estate closings totaling over $4 billion, and even a Grammy-nominated music producer with platinum and gold albums to name. So I always start because how do we go from a Grammy-nominated artistic director of Sony Music International to MLS for international buyers on steroids? Where does the connection, where does the journey begin, and how do we get here?
Yeah, as a first glance, it seems unrelated, but actually, it's an interesting story. I studied music abroad and started my career in the U.S. producing Broadway-style shows for cruise line companies coming out of several different places in the world. And then I became a composer for Discovery Channel. Later, I was signed by Warner Brothers to be an exclusive composer for them. And then from there, I moved to becoming a producer of an arranger for several major record label companies. And then I had the honor of being invited to become an artistic director for Sony Music International, working out of Miami. And I was fortunate to earn 5 platinum albums, 5 gold albums in that Grammy nomination that you mentioned. Now, but I think that the deeper connection comes, from those years of learning how and appreciating how harmony is not an accident. When you're in front of an orchestra and conducting an orchestra or a large band in the studio, you can see that this when you have a dozen people or 50 people deciding collectively that they're going to follow the same tempo, the same score, the same cadence, then you are able to do something beautiful. But if one of those individuals decides to be a little bit more individualistic and it's a little bit ahead, a little bit behind of the tempo, then instead of music, you create noise, right? So that collective experience, having different talents, different temperaments. Now, when they choose to follow the tempo, we do remarkable things together. And I think I brought that into the real estate industry, that understanding that it is so important to have this collective experience where everybody understands that they are playing a part of a larger whole, right? And it struck me. It's when I came to to home building, I saw a lot of potential, but also a lot of wasted opportunity because even within the same companies, you see departments very siloed and independent. And it felt, using the same analogy, like they were playing from different music sheets, different times, different tempos. And let alone once you begin to expand that into other players in the industry, those that you depend on as well, title companies, mortgage companies, brokerages, it felt like a cacophony instead of music, right? And so it was always an instinct of mine to try to bring a little bit more coordination, better communication, and to get departments to play along together and more harmoniously. And
Well,
I think that's how the two industries connect.
no, we, no pun intended, singing from the same hymn book when it comes to the value of bringing the relationships and connecting people together. And so, this ethos of orchestrating and connection and relationships and bringing siloed individuals together. I mean, the crux of today's conversation is around international buyers, and that's
Yeah.
almost completely siloed. So, how do you bring that harmony, or where did you see the opportunity in that harmony to bring these siloed international buyers? Because, from your previous experience with the home builder, you transacted 11,000. So, it sounds like this opportunity has been growing over your career. When did you kind of identify this?
Well, I've been in international business for quite a while, operating internationally, and this demand for the U.S. market was always evident to me, and I just didn't see a structure, well organized system in place to be able to absorb that international demand. Again, it goes back to coordination and working together. Uh, I always felt that real estate should be seen as a cross-border entity versus a localized, regionalized entity, and this to me makes a lot more sense. In particular, because I have been exposed my entire life to individuals that have been doing cross-border investments and understanding well the benefits of such. Uh, this is not different than diversifying portfolio when investing in stocks, right? You're looking at reduction of risks, and so the more you have a more diverse portfolio is in terms of investments, the better protected you're going to be. And so it was interesting coming into this market of real estate and seeing uh, how most developers were not awakened to that. But I was very lucky when I came to Lennar Homes that the company was opening its mind to the possibility of incorporating international business, and they invited me to start this program for them. And they gave me carte blanche, really, an open slate to bring in ideas and try different things. And it was very unconventional, and I have to acknowledge that many times it was very uncomfortable for them because part of the strategies that I created involved creating a soccer tournament in Florida,
Really?
something that they were never involved in, things like this. And that soccer tournament was a branding strategy. It was positioning us in front of an audience abroad in the most effective possible way. Soccer is the biggest sport out there. It's
Yeah.
becoming very big in America right now, but it's for the international community, there's nothing bigger. And so we had an opportunity to create this tournament and start bringing international teams, all top teams from all over the world, to play here in Central Florida, in particular. And we had them staying in our communities and the press and doing multiple events that were ancillary to the tournament. And the tournament became quite big, bigger than what I expected. And it was reaching 650 million households at one point in time.
That's
I
excellent.
became the second most viewed preseason soccer tournament in the world. And then we just had the result that we hoped to have, to have that first heuristical uh, recognition of brand abroad, where our audience could now, they do not necessarily understand what Lennar or Lennar Homes meant, but it was already embedded in the subconscious mind. So symbols are, you have the objective uh, 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 part of it, the objective component, and you also have the subjective one, right? So the first part of the symbol was there, which was the brand, and then we came in with the understanding of what that brand meant. and attach to both over time. So it worked pretty well for us. And again, uh, respecting uh, cognitive bias and heuristics, trying to just play by psychological rules that we know today to be truth. Uh, so from neuro linguistic programming, and so we evolved a very sophisticated marketing strategy. That's what I'm trying to say. Taking in consideration idiosyncrasies of each and every country, how to communicate with people differently. Now there's this tendency to uh, put all countries in Latin America, for instance, in one basket and treat them all the
Ooh,
same, and
I
just
could tell
feel
you,
like, oh, yeah,
never talk
yes.
about Argentina with a Brazilian.
Yes, well, I personally love them, but that is true. There's a rivalry there
A good
that's
rivalry.
historical, yeah, especially in soccer, right? But it's so important to comprehend how to talk to people, and I feel like this should be intuitive because here in the U.S. as well, there's enormous difference between somebody from Los Angeles and New York and Georgia, right? And
Oh yeah.
in Ohio. We communicate in different ways. We have our peculiarities. Uh, and once we understand that, and once we can classify those differences and train people to speak that other language, which is not just Spanish or Portuguese, it's the cultural language, that communication becomes fluidic, and the opportunities that open up are immense. And so it's what an adventure this has been, and to educate a lot of people into doing this and doing it really well, at the point where that the operation that we built at our homes became the leading operation for international sales in the country, and seeing just a process evolving from zero, because this region that we were developing was brand new, was a new division for Lennar. So we got to take something from zero to create a division that pretty much half of its sales were international sales, capturing a
That's
market share
amazing.
of international sales here that was over 60%. So very, very fortunate to have been part of that operation, and to be given this opportunity to create something like this.
Well, and I think to that point, and I love the fact that the beautiful game was the entry point to bring everybody together. And I think what you masterfully did was create the environment to allow two siloed, the American home builder and the international buyer, and create the environment to then act as a conduit. And I think that's what's the impressive thing is with Neo and the platform that you're doing is it's creating that environment because it's breaking down the language barrier. It's creating a central area to which hasn't existed. So I think that's probably what excites you and gets you going every day is that this is something brand new and this new environment that's being created. Um,
Yes.
I don't know if you can kind of talk a little bit about the technology and what, you know, what goes into this tool? How is it enhancing the buyer's experience and increasing that visibility between the international buyer and the developer and home builder here in America, similar to your tournament?
Uh, I talked briefly about this necessity to have different players reading from the same music sheet, and I think that Neo, in many ways, to me, is just that. It's not just a digital tool, but it's an unifying principle. It is something that allows people to play together and understand what they have to do when they have to do it. An interesting. Uh, for me, I always saw Neo as being not only in the first phase becoming this music sheet that everybody could read from and be in sync, and then and on the second stage when we were developing it further, it was to actually take a place of a conductor and in moving people along, creating the timing,
Yeah.
so people understood very clearly what was coming next and what was happening at that specific moment. So Neo is a communication tool, and it's a communication tool that is cross-border, cross-cultural. Uh, Obviously, language, and we're going to probably talk about that further, but language was very important. We wanted to make sure that we could speak the language of the consumers in the United States and also abroad. And we needed to do that in a very effective way. So one of the first approaches of the platform was not to rely on what we had at the time available, the translation softwares like the Google Translates of life. We saw an opportunity to start using AI very early on before it became a thing, and use AI using different models that would talk to each other, and they were all trained on real estate language, taking in consideration the destination country. So when somebody opened up Neo in Peru, in Brazil, in Chile, they would see the translation properly done. There was a respect of intent, there was a respect of message that we wouldn't find in a normal translation environment, and so little by little, Neo became this one single source of truth that we could all rely on. And the surprise was how much just fixing this communication aspect of the operation, how much that impact, how big that impact will be with us, because we started seeing incremental sales coming from implementing the tool very early on. And maybe we should step back a little bit to explain how that happened. I met these two geniuses from Italy, two brothers, Christian and Thomas Calusa, and they were the creators of this platform. They came to me at a very early stage of the platform and introduced this to me as in a moment where I was looking for digital tools to do sales. Because if you remember, we we just went through a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
People are forgetting that very quickly, right? And so during that pandemic, one of the things that happened is that we had our international flights interrupted for a couple of years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things that we never thought would happen, such as our theme parks here in Orlando were closed for 4 months or so. But the interruption of the inbound flights caused a real problem for our international operation. And so I needed to figure out ways to utilize technology that would allow me to sell remotely and to create an emotional experience. Uh, Tools like the MLS, for instance, or similar uh, uh, tools of communication, they're good at communicating information, but they're not very good at doing the selling aspect of it, right? And so when I met these two brothers from Italy, the Calusa brothers, they came with this tool, with this idea, which I loved initially, was can we create an MLS, but for home builders, something that tailors to home building, because the MLS was designed for resale. And I have enormous respect for that platform. But from the point of view of a home builder, it was never friendly to us, and therefore we didn't use it much.
Yeah.
And so creating a platform that allowed us to show our products, uh, showing project first, not listing first, a project, showing development, showing stages, phases. This was a breakthrough. And but obviously, the platform was still in the initial stages and needed to be adapted to larger home builders such as Lennar. Lennar delivers a home every 6 minutes, right? So it's a fast-paced business, and so we spent 2 years collaborating, developing the platform, and making it capable of handling products of any size, from a small custom home builder to the largest home builder in the country and everything in between. And that process was just magical, because at the same time, technology started evolving and AI began to become part of our lives, and we saw the potential of creating something that was transformative for the industry, that went much further than just being a communication platform. So the platform became also a sales tool, a marketing tool, and connected the two most important parts of the industry when they talk about sales and productivity, which would be the developer and the real estate agents, because they, as a channel, they represent the majority of our sales. Data that came out recently uh, uh, educates us that about 89% of all homes purchased in the US in 2024, they were purchased with a realtor participation. So it is very important for us to make sure that that communication between those two entities is done properly. So going back to the analogy of the music sheet, here we have a single source of truth that both could utilize, and communication then was done efficiently, effortlessly, and unbound by geography. We could send the information on the same day to hundreds, thousands of real estate agents all over the globe. We had operations at a time in 30 different countries, partnerships in 30 different countries, and being able to do that quickly and precisely with full control of how our assets were being uh, promoted. Because there's also this point to take in consideration as a home builder uh, and an operator. One of the biggest concerns and that I saw in the industry was the fact that when we operated with brokers, we disseminated information through Dropboxes, giving them a Dropbox with 1,000 pictures and floor plans, and hoping that they will be able to take those pieces of information and assemble them into a brochure that was actually accurate, right? Let alone,
And
uh,
then
uh,
communicate that product.
and they communicate that product to somebody else effectively without being trained by the organization on how to do so. But what I saw over the years was the internet populated by completely different versions of marketing pieces of the same project and contradicting each other. Incorrect floor plans, incorrect elevations, and most concerning, removal, systematic removal of um, the language that would protect us from potential lawsuits, because it's quite important when you're producing these materials that you have your disclaimers that
Oh,
allow you
adhering to the region
to
too.
make changes. Exactly, because changes are happening in a very fast pace, and so those disclaimers pretty much disappeared, right? So I saw this rogue marketing out there as being a liability versus being marketing. And I also wanted to fix that. I wanted to make sure that we as home builders, we had total control of the information being disseminated, that we would not lose control and over layers of communication, and now from us to broker to realtor to client, that the communication was kept intact. And and that required also to think beyond PDFs and static marketing tools, that because the situation is constantly changing, we adopted a system of sales at a time, which is based on the structure of FIFO, first in, first out, the same way that you look at products in a supermarket, right? You're trying to sell the products that are going to expire first. In our case, you're trying to sell the products that are going to be delivered first, because it has real consequences financially. Selling a home that is about to be delivered or a home that is already ready versus one that is going to be completed 6 months from now. And so we needed to have a system of control, of release of inventory uh, at scale that allowed us to move along with this theory of FIFO that we had. And I couldn't find any tool that allowed me to do that, right? And I couldn't do this with a PDF. If I give a PDF with a piece of, with a list of available inventory to a broker, that list was obsolete 2 days later. And so I needed something that was constantly moving and evolving as our operation was constantly moving and evolving. And so all these components became part of Neo. It's looking at every pain point that we had and everything that we disliked, every friction point that we found between us and this most important channel, our broker channel, and make sure first that we respected them, that we respected their time, and by providing them everything that they needed, in order to do their job, which is very different in terms of sales than what we do, right? We usually we have a customer coming uh, and appearing in one of our uh, model homes, welcome home centers, uh, uh, you know, and we also have this traffic that's coming inbound traffic that's coming in due to our digital strategies, and 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 our sales team ends up, because the system is designed this way, ends up moving through these leads very quickly. They are very good at going for the lowest hanging fruit, and the fruit that is already ripe and ready
Yeah.
to be picked. But they are not good at nurturing fruits that are not ready to be picked. But realtors, on the other hand, are very good at doing that. They are very good at working with the lead for 6 months, 4 months, that having that patience. And so we wanted to take that in consideration too when we were building the tool. Is can the realtors send marketing material to consumers, and if the buyer s- sits on that for 2-3 months and opens it up again, make sure that all the information is updated, always updated. And that was it was a magical. Once we begin to operate this way, everybody felt comfortable using the tool. Everybody felt safe using the tool. And at the same time, we had this beautiful thing that that was scary at first, but then we saw it as a very positive. Is that suddenly, for a moment, the phone calls from brokers to us, they ceased. It was like a little gap, and we were concerned about that silence initially, but what we realized is that silence was happening because they no longer needed to call us for inventory information, for pictures of the community. They had those tools in hand. So they did what they would like to do, which is say, give me your materials, teach me how to sell your product, inform me, and get out of my way. Let me do my thing. And that's what they did. So by the second, third month, now we are having those same brokers that were using the platform coming back with buyers that were really ready, willing, and able, uh, and already with specific homes in mind that they wanted to purchase. A lot of the job had been done, and this was wonderful to witness because we began to close faster and close more. The operation became more effective and efficient, and the numbers were real. So we saw an increase in our first year of implementation of the
Excellent.
platform in the hundreds, right? And that was just one division, which was the one that we were testing this at. So I went on and on and on, but that is now the beauty of the platform is it was the ability to be morphing and evolving and resolving pain points over time until it became the product that it is today.
I think that's wonderful. And, kind of from that expertise and those knowledge and trends, I'd love to kind of take our conversation to a macro level. Cause I think, those that are listening, home builders and developers, you know, I'll roughly say there's, I don't hear when I'm speaking with home builders or developers, them consciously putting forth an international strategy. Now there are some say
Mm-hmm.
about, okay, we're noticing international segments, or we're noticing, this
Mm-hmm.
demographic moving into the area because of, say, a Samsung, factory, and there's going to be
Yes.
more, something to that degree, but nothing that's kind
Mm-hmm.
of overarching coherent. And so you talked a little bit about macro trends, one being kind of COVID, which, you know, people think it's a long time ago, but, we're here at 3, 4 years past. You had a shutdown in the international, but now we're seeing kind of that growing segment coming back up. But we also have a growing geopolitical tension, or at least
Mm-hmm.
shifting views. And in your perspective, what are some macro trends that you're seeing that will indicate that this shift is going to continue or even accelerate in the current situation?
Those, all right. So we can unpack this because there are so many different elements there. First, the international business is growing. The premise is correct, but perhaps a better way of looking at that is understanding that this growth is directly tied to the domestic demand. If you look at how the international business, and we've been tracking this since about 2007, what we perceived is when we went through the Great Recession and domestic markets subsided, almost went away, we began to see this influx of international business coming in. And in certain markets, such as Southeast Florida, for instance, you saw that, South Florida, we saw that influx of international business coming in at such fast pace that it represented over half of the sales of real estate down there. And it happened in several markets as well. That peaked in 2017. That's when we had the highest amount of international business coming based on the data that we have available. And then what happened after 2017, the domestic market, it begins to surge. Now it starts going up and picking up. And so the international market began to go down. And that's when the data started telling us that maybe there was a correlation there. Is it possible that we're looking at an ebb and flow and a balancing act between domestic and international? Mm-hmm. And that's what, after about 20 years of looking at the data, that seems to be the case. And we're experiencing this again right now. So international demand in the past year,
well, that's
from
what I was going to say. Does that still hold up today with that kind of lax in domestic?
We're seeing it again. We demand from mid 2024 to mid 2025, international business increased by 33%, which is sizable. And we are seeing them coming in increasingly more educated about our market. So we are experiencing this surge in markets that have prepared already, that are used to work with this international business. They are more friendly to them, more welcoming to them, and especially companies that have built systems to absorb this type of international inflow. And so again, we see that international business is this parallel channel that works to counterbalance the cyclical movements of our market. And if you think about that strategically, we have cycles. If we look back from 1795 to today, and we look at the cycles in real estate, you're going to see that it behaves like a heartbeat, right? Every 18 and a half years in general, as an average. You have, a peak to peak or valley to a valley, mm-hmm. from buyer's market to buyer's market, seller's market to seller's market. And home builders have always been, in some ways, victims of that circumstance, right? Yeah. Victims of the market cycles.
When the market's good, save up for the rainy days because they're going to be coming.
Exactly. But you know that it's coming, right? You always know that the next cycle will come. But once you start incorporating international business, offsetting this decline that you have, that leads to a deep buyer's market, which is what we are beginning to experience right now. If you have a way to offset that, you basically create a safety net. So a home builder that prepares and begins to increase the volume of international sales in a moment that the domestic sales are going down, they don't go all the way to the bottom like the competitors that don't have that alternative in place. And so they are able to just go down a little bit and bounce out into the next peak opportunity of the market, going back to a recovery and all the way to what would be another seller's market. And so, and that's what we experienced at Lennar when we created the international program, because that was my hypothesis in the beginning: is could this work as a safety net? It was still a hypothesis, but by the time this market this cycle began, it became clear that that hypothesis was most likely true, that we can become masters of our destiny if we incorporate systematically this international sales component into our overall sales strategy. We don't think of it as being just this parallel niche exotic thing, but a component that is intrinsic to the sales uh, 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 opportunities or sales strategies that we have.
Well, what do you think is one of the, kind of diving into that hypothesis, what do you think are some of the driving factors that drive international buyers when the domestic demand is down? Is there anything that's happening outside on a
Oh,
macro
that's a
level that?
yes, excellent question. There, uh, and this is may come as a surprise to many people that are not that don't understand very well the economies of other countries. But let's talk about currency to start with. So the U.S. currency, when you compare us with other currency, in particular those countries that consume the most products here in real estate, our currency has gained in value, right? And in exchange has gained between 50 to 100% in comparison to other currencies. When you look at countries, let's look at Latin American countries, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, right? They lost half, 60% of their value against the dollar in the last 10 years, right? Compounded. And so if you had an investment in those countries versus having the same investment here, and you started that 10 years ago, your money here was twice as much just because of that. I mean, if you're converting that money back into your currency. So currency exchange is a major factor. The dollar and the strength of the dollar and the fact that 60% of international transactions, in particular commodities, are done with the dollar. This cannot be understated. Second one is inflation. Inflation here in the US, even though we like to think it is high because we want to be at that magical 2% number, the reality is that our inflation in the past 10 years has been roughly between 26, 27%.
Mhm.
While most of other countries that consume real estate here, the inflation for them was twice as much or even higher. And so, again, it's one advantage should be dollarizing your investment. Uh, Third, which is super important, is how real estate functions in terms of regulations, laws. Our states here, in particular states like Florida, which attracted the majority of international investment in the country, are states that protect the owner of the asset. So the property owner here is protected. If you have a tenant that is not paying rent, it is very easy, very quick to get this tenant out and then replace it with a better tenant. Now, if you look outside of the United States, and now I'm talking about Latin America, Europe, Asia, it might take you 6 months to a year and sometimes even longer than that if somebody just stops paying the rent. And so if you are an investor investing in real estate, in long-term rental investment, single-family rental, for instance, uh, you would favor having that investment in the United States because the laws here are protecting you as the owner of the asset. And so you combine these aspects and then this fourth, which is the basic one we mentioned before, which is diversifying your portfolio of investments for wealthy clients that are looking for diversification. Real estate in the United States is one of the most solid and investments you can make. It today it is understood, in particular in the last 10 years, that not having real estate in the United States as part of your portfolio is just a crazy thing to do. Because it protects them, it protects their investment, it protects their wealth. And so now that this it has become a common knowledge in those markets, now that they are much better educated about how to invest in the US, because we've been doing this work now for over a decade of educating investors abroad all these opportunities, the demand is always there. The demand is always there. The question is not really the demand. The question is, are we as home builders, as a market, prepared, equipped to deal with these buyers, because they have the idiosyncrasies, they have the peculiarities, right? And so we have to be able to adapt to those and understand who we're talking to. This is not just a matter of language. It's understanding also that their needs are very different than the needs of a domestic buyer.